Have you ever started something you considered difficult and thought to yourself, I don't think I can do this? Or maybe you were thinking that I can probably handle this. That internal belief of yours about whether you'll succeed or not can make a big difference in how things actually turn out. Psychology has a name for this belief. It's called self-efficacy. In this video, I'll briefly explore what self-efficacy is, why it has been such an influential idea in psychology, and also where its limits and criticisms lie today in 2020s. Because like most psychological theories, they are useful under the right circumstances, but they're not perfect. The concept of self-efficacy was brought into daylight by a psychologist called Albert Bandura in the late 1970s. Bandura has been a central figure in the development of social cognitive theory, of which self-efficacy is a vital part of. He was an active academic researcher, writer, and a lecturer, especially during the 80s and the 90s. Today in 2025, self-efficacy is still a growing area of academic research. Self-efficacy refers to your belief in your ability to perform the actions required to achieve a specific goal. It's not general confidence. It's task-specific, and it's deeply tied into the context. Self-efficacy has been linked to a wide range of beneficial outcomes, such as better motivation, more goal persistence, greater stress regulation, stronger academic and job performance. In school settings, students with higher self-efficacy tend to study more persistently, handle setbacks with more resilience, and oftentimes perform better, not just because they're more capable, but because they believe their efforts will pay off. Bandura argued that belief in one's ability to act is one of the most important factors in human behavior, as it influences whether people even try in the first place. Bandura proposed 4 key sources of self-efficacy. In other words, 4 ways we develop the belief that we can achieve goals. The first one is mastery experiences. When we succeed at something, especially after effort or failure, you build a belief that you can do it again. For example, if a student studies hard and passes a difficult exam, they're more likely to believe they can succeed in future exams too. That belief is grounded in personal experience, and it's harder to shake. But the opposite is also true. Repeated failure can erode self-efficacy, especially if it's not put into perspective or followed by support. Social modeling is the second source of self-efficacy. We don't just learn from our own successes, we also learn by watching others. Seeing someone like you succeed makes it feel more possible, as it sends the message that if they can do it, I can probably do it too. That's why representation and peer modeling matters in education, leadership, and even in marketing and media. The third source of self-efficacy is verbal persuasion. This is about feedback, encouragement, and social support. When someone you trust tells you that you've got what it takes, it can strengthen your belief even when you're doubting yourself. But verbal persuasion can be fragile. It works best when it's realistic and specific, not just empty praise. Finally, emotional and physical states are also sources of self-efficacy. How we feel physically and emotionally can shape how capable we believe we are. When we're calm, focused, energized, challenges feel manageable. But when we're anxious, tired, or overwhelmed, even small tasks can feel impossible. Learning to regulate those emotional responses through practice, support, or mindset training can improve self-efficacy over time. Together, these 4 sources shape our future beliefs, what we think we can or cannot do. But here's the key point. Self-efficacy is not a guarantee of success. It is, after all, a belief, not an ability. It's a powerful belief, but it's still just one part of the picture. That brings us to some important critiques. First, self-efficacy theory sometimes tends to frame success or failure as a result of individuals' beliefs and effort. This can critically downplay the role of external factors like structural inequality, lack of access, discrimination, or poor quality instruction. Believing you can doesn't change all the barriers, and not believing doesn't mean you're personally to blame either. Life is not always fair or equal, and we are all given unique life circumstances where randomness plays a role. We cannot necessarily choose what happens in our life, but we can always make a choice how we react to it. Second, Research has shown that people with high self-efficacy don't always perform better. In some studies, people with lower self-efficacy compared to the actual level of the skill needed showed more accurate self-assessments. And in certain cases, underconfidence led to more effort and better outcomes. In other words, believing you can do something is very helpful, but it's not always an accurate predictor of whether or how well you will succeed. There seems to be such a thing as a miscalibration of self-efficacy. A good piece of research found that students with lower grades often reported higher self-efficacy compared to the levels of self-efficacy their peers with higher grades reported. This suggests that in this specific study, students with lower grades were overestimating their abilities. The same problem is also tied to the issue that success or achieving a goal is not always black and white. Sometimes you can succeed better or succeed worse, but still succeed. For example, you can pass an exam, but you may have gotten an A or B. The third critique is that as self-efficacy is contextual, measuring it well requires specific tools, not just general questionnaire items, such as how confident are you? This makes it harder to compare results across studies and different populations. To give an example, Bandura demonstrated numerous questionnaires to assess self-efficacy in specific situations, such as driving on a highway and baking cakes. As a last critique, self-efficacy overlaps conceptually with things like self-esteem, locus of control, perceived behavioral control, and competence beliefs. These overlaps between other well-established concepts can muddy the waters. It's not always clear where one concept ends and one begins. So, should we value self-efficacy? Yes, with a grain of salt and a fair amount of common sense. Self-efficacy is a useful paradigm. It helps explain how belief shapes behavior, especially in learning, work, and emotional coping. But it's not a silver bullet, and it doesn't replace the importance of skill, access, support, or context. We should understand it as a one piece of the broader psychological puzzle, something that interacts with personality, environment, culture, and circumstance. So, self-efficacy matters, but it matters as part of a bigger picture, not in isolation. In fact, self-efficacy is one of the core concepts in social cognitive theory, which emphasizes that human behavior is shaped by a dynamic interaction between personal factors, behavior, and environment. Bandura called this triadic reciprocal determinism, the idea that we are not just shaped by our own environment, we're also active participants who shape it in return. Self-efficacy sits at the heart of that process because it influences what we choose to do, how long we stick with it, and how we interpret the outcome. Nowadays, in the middle of 2020s, it's important to acknowledge that self-efficacy has overlapping concepts in other major psychological theories, such as self-determination theory, expectancy value theory, and the theory of planned behavior. Across all of these, one core idea keeps showing up. People act when they believe their actions can make a difference. And that belief is powerful, but it works best when it's supported by real opportunities, constructive feedback, and environments that enable growth. And please, do not think or spread the idea that you are high or low in self-efficacy in general. As said, self-efficacy is context-specific, and I'm sure that you can do better. Towards what are you low in self-efficacy? Or what is it that you feel so highly self-efficient in or about? A true self-efficacy researcher always ties self-efficacy into context, not just that general feeling. If you found this video helpful or thought-provoking, feel free to like, dislike, or even share this to a friend who's interested in psychology. And if you'd like to see more content like this, scientific, reflective and grounded, curated and spoken by a neuropsychologist, let me know in the comments what you'd like to explore next. I promise to find a place in nature at least as spectacular as this for the next video. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.